Welcome to the Jess Larsen Show on innovation and leadership. On this episode, we've got Ross Hamilton. Ross is an author, a podcaster, an entrepreneur. Recently sold his business, Connected Investors, to First American for almost $100 million. Newly acquired 50 acres in North Carolina. He's got some cool stuff going on with. Ross, thanks for joining.
Yeah, I'm really excited to be here and just share as much as I can with the listeners of this great show.
Yeah. So let's start with the Connected Investors story. Actually, let's go back further than that. Tell us how you grew up and why you think that was an advantage to you being an entrepreneur.
Actually, that's where I was going to go anyway.
Okay.
Because, yes, and I'll make sure that what I'm about to share with everyone really ties in to you and your life as well. It's not just about me here, but my background, when I go back to the days when I used to compete semi-professionally in BMX. So at a really young age, a gentleman by the name of Dave Mira, who had a video game, was the Michael Jordan of BMX, moved to my town. And I was part of a small group of just BMXers, basically people who couldn't figure out how to ollie a skateboard. And he came here and he built a skate park right before he got really popular. And we met him. We helped him build the skate park. We got to ride with him every day. And he really made the impossible possible. And that's when I learned how important it was to surround yourself with people that are just completely next level. I mean, he would look at a jump and he'd say, I'm going to tap my tire on the ceiling. I'm like, really? He would do a backflip and the ceiling of his skate park was filled with tire marks on it. Something I would never have thought was possible. So when I was trying to just learn a bar spin, it felt easy because I just watched him get 20 feet in the air and make it down okay. So at an early age, BMX played a really big role in just any sort of action sport because you have to put yourself out there. If you're heading toward a jump and you're not committed, it's going to hurt. And the people that you ride with also, they're your competitors, but they're your friends. You're learning from each other. So all of those skills translated very good into business. And that's kind of where it all started. I'll stop there for a second.
So in 86, as a 6-year-old, I moved from a small town about 12 hours north of the Canadian-US border to Edmonton, which is only 6 hours north of the Canadian-US border, right? And I got a Kulahara, and BMX was everything for us, right? And we were always out in the forest building jumps. And at college, when I couldn't afford a car, I went and got another BMX. And I'm interested. We've had so many folks on this show who have a background in action sports, and skateboarders, snowboarders, people who've dealt with uncertainty. And it was really fun for me. We got to have Ryan Nyquist on the show, and got to talk. You talk about bar spins, right?
Yeah, no, I know. Right? I know Ryan well. So I think about myself, my lessons. I grew up a snowboarder in Western Canada, picked up skateboarding so we could practice it in the summer, and always had bikes around. I had the friends that stayed on the BMX and could finally land the backflips and stuff like that. But there's this windshield element I see of people who spend time with someone significantly better than them. Like I remember in high school when I started riding with somebody who was 5 years older than me, and like my friends, we were lucky to land 360s on our snowboards. And then that year I went to dropping 30-foot cliffs and doing switch 540s, and as a 17-year-old, and it was purely by who I was riding with. So I can't imagine having actually ridden with Dave Mira on a daily basis. Can you talk about this idea of expanding what's possible in your mind from a situation like that? Yeah. And it's really like to business, it translates into like your mentors and your network. People always talk about your network equals your net worth, right? Take the 5 people you hang around with and average out their income. Well, that translates through anything and everything that you want to do. And in BMX, I got really good really fast because I was constantly riding with the top pros that were out there. And because where Dave Mira lived, everyone else wanted to come. So Ryan Nyquist and Dave were good buddies. Dave ultimately moved up to Greenville where Ryan Nyquist was. Now Ryan lives back in Wilmington. Anyway, but 90% of it, maybe even 100% of it, is just all in your mind in believing that it can be done. and just watching someone else do it, it starts to bring that into reality to where you stop making excuses and stop thinking about all the things that could go wrong and start thinking about all the things that could go right. And riding with those pros, it's intoxicating. It's exciting. And you watch them, but also you watch them struggle through injuries and you watch them come back. Actually, just yesterday, I mean, I'm 40 years old. I moved to mountain biking now that I live in Asheville, but I took one of my hardest falls yesterday. And just a reminder of the fact that I'm alive, right? I've been limping around all day, but yeah, I mean, that's kind of where the correlation is. And business is exactly the same. When you want to do something that seems big, if you surround yourself with people that are doing it in their sleep, then it gets smaller. And that's, if you're at home and you're just kind of you're not really around people that are motivating you. I think it's the motivation. Inspiration, they're not motivating, they're not inspiring. You're not trying to keep up with them in a fun way. Then you're going to have a nice, easy, stagnant life. And I'm not saying any of that is bad. Anyway, that's just kind of what that mentality breeds.
Being like an action sports junkie, actually, I'm still an action sports junkie. Dave was different, right? I mean, there's so many great BMXers, the Matt Hoffmans, everyone. When you think about what was different about Dave, what is it in your mind?
Consistency. He always landed in contests. He didn't mess up. He wasn't trying anything for the first time. He was dialed in. He was consistent. I got to witness his work ethic, like hand in hand, and watch him just ride and ride and ride. And actually right now, the gentleman would be a kind of a fun interview. Chris Doyle, he now announces for the X Games. He was right there with Dave, and I would watch him just try a trick over and over and over and over and over. And we'd go out and go have fun and cause trouble like action sport people did. And Chris Doyle would stay there and just keep doing it. So the commitment and the work ethic in the extreme sport area was really important. Dave was very well polished, intentional, and talented because of those things.
Yeah, I think about two of my friends that I feel like went the furthest with BMX. The kiddos now, you could do the backflips, Ryan James, and a different buddy of mine, Johnny Foran, out from Vancouver Island. And like, even though they didn't achieve anything with Dave Mira, like I can see those elements in them of work ethic. Like that's like talent, but work ethic. Like they both just like got after it and kept doing it after, when everybody was done. They kept doing whatever they're doing. And like, we had Johnny on the show because he's built businesses and sold them since and stuff like that. And like, some talent, lots of work ethic, consistency, like such strong principles, especially for entrepreneurship where outcomes are uncertain, right?
It's risk. I mean, action sports is risk. And you're numbing yourself or you're normalizing risk. So with house flipping, it's called flipping, right? Like every house was a trick. And sometimes you fall, but that's where you really learn the most in BMX and action sports. When I would fall, typically I would try a trick, I would fall, and then I'm like, oh, that fall wasn't that bad. Then I would just do it right the next time. I don't know what it was, but yeah, having risk be part of your everyday is what action sports does. And I think that's why those individuals, if they're committed, focused, and not distracted, can just get phenomenal results using outside of the box type tactics and creativity. Because action sports is all creativity. You can use things that aren't supposed to be ramps, and that's business. No one ever thought that rail over there was going to be used, but you saw it. You saw a line, and you got to it. So creativity plays a role as well.
Yeah. Well, by the way, what are you riding for a bike these days?
I'm riding a dirt jumper.
What size?
24. I have every type of bike you could imagine, but I'm most at home on a dirt jumper. It's a little bigger, more stable than a twitchy BMX bike, and it has the front shock, which helps your 40-year-old back and ankles.
Yeah. we moved out to cabin community out past Park City, but I specifically got, an acre and some that's got, a lot of drop. Like we built some 10-foot gap. We built a 10-foot gap and some other stuff on it so far. And my boys have been into the dirt jumping, and it's
good.
It's interesting, like trying to take those old BMX skills and just like a little bit bigger bike, a little bit, thinking about some of those things, right?
Yeah, we actually had a Pat Casey, who was a huge star in BMX these days, just actually passed away a few days ago. He was in like the top. I was always rooting for him in the contest. It was hard to hear that. When Dave Mira committed suicide, that was really tough as well. So it's a wild ride for sure. There's real risk there, and it can go either way.
Yeah. When you think about, so often people think entrepreneurs like risk. And to me, I feel like great entrepreneurs are not looking for risk. They're looking how to mitigate risk. Like I see job people trying to avoid risk, where entrepreneurs or certain kinds of investors are trying to mitigate risk. Like, I don't know how you feel about this, but like, I think about skateboarding and like going out with guys, a bunch of teenage boys, everybody's trying to show how tough they are. And somebody's like, do you dare me to jump that 12 stair? It's like, no, dude, you've never landed a 5 stair. No, I don't dare you. Like, I'm not driving you to the hospital. Like, you can't do that. Like, why don't you just try landing a 5 stair and then a 6, work your way up. And like, you talk about this, like you did the flip, it didn't work out. So you just did it right next time. What I heard in that, and I'm going to put words in your mouth, so I want you to correct me, is like, you're trying things that are a little outside your comfort zone, and the nature of doing them helps you realize what you need to do next so it'll eventually be in your comfort zone. How would you say that better, or do you disagree?
Yeah, this is a really fun conversation, by the way, because I haven't went this deep before in the psychology of BMX and business, but knowing your limits is important. And that's really what you're talking about there. Like, any trick that I would do that I would fall would just be a step up from one that I did before, or ties in or has the same feel in some way. So that's what now there's the foam pit at Woodward where you get to go crazy, which I spent a lot of time at that camp growing up. But yeah, it's knowing your limits is definitely important. And it's a goal, right? So it's like you want to have those SMART goals that are specific, measurable, actionable, reasonable, and time bound. And if it's not reasonable, you're not going to hit your goal. So the thing is to constantly be building to set realistic goals that you constantly hit. So when you say it, you do it. When you say, there's no backing out. You're training your willpower to follow through on something, but it can't be 100% outside of what you've ever done.
Yeah, I think about that. Like, on my snowboard, I haven't lighted out snow yet, but I did my first 900 at age 41 into the foam pit at Woodward, right? And like this idea of like having people to experiment with, like to run your business ideas past who have like much bigger scope than you, or running simulations before you take the investor dollars, or, can we do this with one Airbnb unit before we build 100, or like survivable mistakes. I'm interested, as you looked at, what did connected investors get up before you sold it? Like 1.7 million people or something? Like what is it these days?
Yeah. And count, it depends on, because connected investors was around so long. So we got to millions and millions of people, but to connect BMX with real estate, I got to this part in BMX to where I injured myself pretty bad, and I was out for about a year and a half at a pretty crucial time in action sports. And when I came back, it was just really hard to catch up with everyone at that level. And as a matter of fact, Dave Mira had moved from Wilmington to Greenville. So the whole scene left. I was kind of broken. I understood what my limits were. I was not going to be an X Game gold medalist, right? So I had to really assess what I wanted to do in life there. And what I wanted to do is work really hard so I can do whatever I want and ride BMX whenever I wanted to, because I honestly enjoyed it. I spend most of my time on my bike now after I sold my company. So real estate is, to me, the best option for people with limited options. I was broke. I had all my eggs in the real estate basket. I had a BMX clothing company as well, and a Volkswagen van. Used to travel all around the country and sponsor kids. So I was like all in on BMX. And I just, after Dave left and I was hitting that college age, there were some tough decisions. So I found real estate and just kind of went all in on real estate, but I approached it the same way that I approached business. I wanted to surround myself with very successful people. I wanted to create a skate park, right? A place where people would come together to where I can be a bit of an authority figure, and that would help my real estate business. So what I was doing is I would flip real estate and use the profits of my real estate flips to invest in my tech company. And it was very organic. It started, I was using connected investors to find the deals or the buyers. And then I would use that money to develop out other features. So it was a really exciting time. I mean, social media back then, you had to have an invitation into Facebook through a Ivy League college. MySpace was out there, but it just didn't have any. It just didn't have it, right? It never really worked. So I thought, real estate is a very connected business. Let me create one of these social platforms. So really, the domain name was available on GoDaddy, and that was all I really needed to start developing it and building it out. And it was the new business model of the world really early on. So I got like pulled by just the new way commerce is done, and just kind of kept iterating on the company and building it. And yeah, it was a lot of fun, and it was a great journey. It's one of the funnest things I've done. Made a lot of good friends and stuff like that throughout the journey.
So I don't know if you feel this way. I'd be interested to hear if you do, but like sometimes I do feel like some of my action sports friends who never quite got into business as much, I don't feel quite as connected to them anymore, because I'm like, no, you gotta do both these sports. And like, there's a thrill from business too. And
yeah. I mean, my best friend is still the person that I rode with all the time. I mean, we took two very different paths, but then kind of came back together later in life. But I mean, it's, when you're all in on something, it's tough to be friends with people who aren't. Like back when I was in BMX, if you didn't ride BMX, maybe you skated, like I didn't have anything to talk to you about, because it just wasn't, I didn't have patience for anything that wasn't about BMX then. And that's kind of how I was with business a little bit once I started that. And so maybe that's the connection or lack of that you're feeling.
Yeah, probably, right? So tell us over the years, the different revenue models that you were able to put into the business and how those came about.
Yeah, well, I mean, Connected Investors started out as a social networking platform for real estate investors. We didn't really sell anything. And we started to bring on real estate experts that wanted to share their information with our members. So there was a lot of affiliate commission that we would make back then. This way I can just focus on building it out and bring in experts that had everything that our members needed. But over time, we got to watch the data and what people really wanted. And at the time, my timelines are a little tough in my head, but it's when deals were plentiful, but money was really tough to get. So actually it's funny, it all ties back together. I became good friends with the CEO of a company called LendingTree. They basically modernized funding for primary residence back in the day. Him and I were both training for an Ironman triathlon, and we kind of bonded over that. He was the elite in the space, and he was like my Dave Mira of that world. And actually I just talked to him today. I haven't talked to him in a while. I talked to him today, a few hours ago. But we talked about how real estate investors get funding and how it's just ridiculous. Like it's so expensive. It's so hard to find a lender. So he helped me architect a funding solution for real estate investors where you press a few buttons and non-bank private lenders compete to be the lender for your non-owner occupied property, whether it's commercial, residential, fix and flip, whatever that was. But we took an existing business model that worked really well and we brought it into another world. And I had Dave Mira, Doug Lebda, helping me with that. And that was really the turning point of Connected Investors, because it changed it from a hobby to a real business. If you guys know who Than Merrill is, he's a good buddy of mine as well. And he had to flip this house show. And he's like, Russ, if you can't buy your own traffic and you're relying on affiliates, you kind of have more of a hobby than a real business, because it's hard to project and to scale and to grow. And that really stuck with me. And it was true. So with when we introduced this private lending network that anyone can use, privatelenders.com, essentially we were able to buy traffic at scale, because lenders would pay us for the opportunity to give you money. So we were able to get our ad spend back day zero. And then we had people that were joining our network. So it was a way for me to grow the Connected Investors user base through buying millions of dollars of ads. And what was really nice is all the American Express points I was getting. I was having fun with that. Man. Yeah, that was a good time. I did. Yeah.
Where's the best place you went?
I would buy bikes. I'd buy dirt bikes. I'd buy all sorts of. I didn't like to buy depreciating assets, but I never felt bad using my Amex points to buy any of that stuff. We did an awesome trip to Iceland, and I really enjoyed driving around that entire country. If anyone's ever done that, they know what I'm talking about.
So since moving out to the mountains, I finally fulfilled my dream of getting into dirt bikes. What do you like to ride dirt bike-wise?
I ride... I try to classify myself as an electric hillbilly now. Sorry if that word's derogatory to anyone. But basically, I try to have all electric stuff. So I have these awesome electric dirt bikes. They're like 110 pounds. The Suron X. Yeah, they go 60 miles an hour, 110 pounds. They're really fun. I've never had a throttle before, though. So it's really hard to jump with a throttle. And for anyone who ever gets one, everyone gets hurt. When they go to get off the thing, they forget it's on, and they hit that throttle, and that thing will pop. That thing will pop up in the air right over your head. But the electric dirt bikes is what I've been on.
So, did you hear Alta got bought by Bombardier? Do you remember those Alta dirt bikes that were like the first? Okay, you've seen the KTM electric bike, yes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's fine. Kind of comparable to 250, right? But those Altas were awesome. Anyways, I was stoked to find out Bombardier bought that tech. So, fingers crossed.
Take a look what they do with it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Interesting. So, let's go back. So you're doing, you bring the private lending part, this becomes a business. You're able to buy traffic profitably. What was the next pivot point? Yeah. What was the next level of the business after that really took off?
Yeah, the next level of the business was people started to want to buy us, which was interesting because we were a startup. I didn't raise any money for it. I was just funding it with my real estate flips. So it was interesting to go through a few potential acquisitions of selling the company, which really leveled us up. We got beat up. We learned a lot. We got some good offers, almost sold, but we were growing so fast. I decided to turn the offer down. And I'm really glad that I did. But if you have a business, anytime someone wants to buy it, it's like once every 5 years, it feels like in a business life, you get the opportunity to cash your chips in. So I'm glad I didn't cash my chips in then, kind of kept moving on. And we, again, the same way that we found private lenders, we just watched what everyone was having a hard time with. Tides had changed. Money was easy to get. Deals were hard to get. So we basically went all in on figuring out all of the ways to find deeply discounted properties that are not listed on the MLS. And we created some software for our members that's known as PIN. And it was the right product at the right time because real estate investors were buying it. Agents were buying it. The average homeowner was buying it. A lot of people were coming on board to try to find those properties that weren't being bid all the way through the roof. So we launched that product, and it just complemented the lending side perfect. So we built a market. We had to build a marketplace with the lending side because we had to have lenders and borrowers. That's very hard to get right, but we were able to do that. And then we had the data. So now they were finding properties with our data, then they were going to our private lender network and they were finding the money. So we kind of built the ability for someone to do everything they need to do, from finding, figuring, and flipping, all within one platform. And then the company that ultimately bought us was the company that we were buying our data from. They're like the supplier of data to anyone who has like an online estimate, a property streaming software. They've been around since 1890, and they're the people who have the real estate data, and they wanted to get direct to the consumer. So they offered to buy us right as someone else offered to buy us. Great timing. And we worked out a deal. I'd passed on a handful of other people that wanted to buy us because they wouldn't have been able to provide any value to the platform. But this company is the data company, so they were the right people to be purchased by. And if I said no and they bought my competitor, what in the world would I be doing if I'm competing with someone who is the person I'm buying the data from? They were going to get into the business and it was going to be over, because the stuff that they're doing right now to the platform is just beyond next level. They have millions and millions and millions of dollars to invest in the platform. They don't have to flip a house, right? Don't get me wrong. We had the data product. We started to make our subscription revenue was really ticking up. And that's why we were able to sell, because there were so many people subscribing to the software. So we were doing very well. The company was making a lot of money, but we didn't have $5 million to invest in something that might work. The new company does. So yeah, it was great timing. And it was right during COVID. So we were the first company they ever bought without sitting down face to face with the people they were going to be buying it from. So I think it worked to my advantage.
So can you give us an example of that? I mean, like, I made quite a bit of money and lost it all 2 different times in my 20s. And then I became a devotee of Warren Buffett and I quit speculating, right? And so this idea of can you acquire an undervalued asset is, kind of the hallmark of value investing, right? Can you give us an example of how you did that, the pin and approach, and some examples?
Yeah, well, when I was young, when I first started investing in real estate, what I would do is I would gas up my car, I'd drive down to all the courthouses, I would pull files, SP files, special proceeding file number 523. I'd open it up, I'd skim it, look to see if it's something I wanted. I'd write that data down. Then I would actually drive and I would knock on the doors of people. Because again, I'm just going to go get it, right? I'm going to hit that job. I'd knock on the door. It was risky. And I would try to buy or work out a win-win solution with the individual who's going to lose their home to foreclosure. Had a lot of different ways that I did that. And that was how I made my first $1 million investing in real estate, was through buying properties that were in foreclosure. Now, the way that I would get value in those properties is I would look for properties that had 2 mortgages and the second mortgage was in foreclosure. And I would basically, if it's a $200,000 property, a $50,000 second, I could give the second mortgage $5,000 to settle that. And then I would take over the other notes sometimes. I would pay it off, whatever I had to do. So I was able to build equity in properties during times when it was stagnant. And that was really important, because real estate, people ask me all the time, like, should I buy real estate? You should buy undervalued real estate all the time. Should you pay retail right now? No. I mean, everyone is a real estate investor. Just if you pay retail for your properties, you're not a good real estate investor. So if you own a house, you're a real estate investor. If you paid retail for it, you suck at it, right? I mean, no, trust me, I played retail for properties when I'm in love with them. So I totally get that. So that was like my upbringing from BMX into being a door knocker. That's how I was making the money to invest in connected investors. And then when we had the data, all of a sudden I had all that data. So you didn't have to drive to the courthouses. You didn't have to do what I was doing. You can just press a button and find any type of lead you've ever heard of. You're talking about foreclosures, pre-foreclosures, vacant, people who live out of town that inherited a house that has a mechanic's lien on it, people who just got a divorce, people who have a 2-bedroom but just had a 3rd kid, people, like every scenario of a reason why someone would want to sell. We gathered all that data together, put it in one easy to navigate Airbnb style user interface, and offered it to people at at a very reasonable price. And we even gave them the training. So people would get the software, we'd show them how to use it. And the amount of success stories are unmeasurable of people that did really well. Anytime you buy, if you could press a button in a piece of software and buy a stock for 20% less, how many times did you do that? Like a million times, right? So anyway, it's good to buy real estate if you're buying at a discount right now. And that's a high level of what the PIN software does for people.
Yeah. You know, we have a lot of great entrepreneurs on the show, and it's really exciting, the kind of outcomes, a number of them we'll get. But I kind of have like a special place in my heart for people who bootstrap. So building a company that sells for almost $100 million is a big accomplishment. Bootstrapping that, not doing that with tens of millions of dollars of venture money, doing it yourself is a whole nother ball of wax. What advice do you have for entrepreneurs who want to bootstrap but reach that level of success?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's so many different answers to that. And really it has everything to do with, you guys, some of you might love this, some of you might be like in one ear at the other, but it has so much to do with your mindset and just your mental toughness and just your ability to completely hypnotize yourself into believing that you can do what you're trying to do. So and again, my success is kind of built on themselves, just like those tricks. I had a BMX clothing company. I learned a little bit there, right? Before that, I had like 50 little businesses that I was playing with. Then I got into real estate. I had success in real estate. And then I moved into tech and I had success in tech. So what's the same, because it's all different, the same is your habits, the way that you approach problems. Do you have a problem or do you have a project? We don't have problems. We just have projects, right? That's one of the lessons I'm teaching my 5-year-old daughter. It's not a problem. It's a project. Let's have fun with this. So it's sometimes it's hard to sharpen the sword because you get so caught up in like the tactical how-tos, but things are going to be changing faster than ever before. So having mental toughness, resilience, good habits, good network, those are the things that I always had around me. And I found some great, philosophies that tie into it that don't interfere with any religions, such as like Stoicism. If you've ever studied that is to me, that's the entrepreneur's operating system. And the principles of Think and Grow Rich, they're the basics, but if you want to be good at something, be great at the basics. So that's the number one bit of advice I would give. And start as soon as you can. Like, I think what I did really good is I started at 18, 19 years old. So if you're young, you're on this show, like, you got to start right now. If you're in your 40s, you got to start right now. The time is always right now. Conditions will never be perfect, but the conditions right now are exciting because it's a snow globe out there. So it's doable, and also enjoy the journey, because that's the most exciting part of it.
Yeah. So I'm interested in how you're applying some of this to AI these days. You mentioned you're looking at some interesting things there.
Yeah. So right now we're in the process of taking every single bit of real estate data you can ever imagine and creating different AI algorithms to help figure out which properties are going to be the most profitable, which people are going to be the most likely to sell at a discount, how much to offer on properties, what to say to people, just all the stuff that we do. Like at first I used to go to the courthouse. Now you can press a button and see all that data. Everything that we would try to train people in our education programs, we're feeding that into artificial intelligence tied in with the property data. So you can start to find those needle in the haystack type deals. And we're in the early phases of this. But it's really exciting to kind of watch it all come about. I mean, real estate is to me, real estate is the last big piece of the economy that hasn't been completely disrupted by technology. Wall Street has done a number on it, but there are so many inefficiencies in real estate. There's brokers, right? There's a broker when you buy. If you have a broker, it means something's broke. And those brokers are doing all they can from a political standpoint to not be obsolete. I mean, they're like number 1 or 2 when it comes to spending money lobbying. It's kind of crazy how no one ever talks about it. But all of those inefficiencies are starting to get streamlined. Even the level field of education and experience is starting to get streamlined. And there's a big shakeup that's going to happen in real estate from a tech perspective. I can expand on where I kind of see it going if you want to hear.
Yeah, and I just want to clarify: this is at First American, or this is something you're doing yourself? Or?
It's at Connected Investors, which is now a First American company. I still advise and help with things because now it's like I have a war chest of money in every bit of data and 100 data scientists to go do cool stuff. So I enjoy innovating and doing things, and so I'm helping them bridge that gap.
Yeah, I'm super interested to hear where you think it's going.
Yeah, I mean, well, what I'm seeing right now is there's a big push in innovation on partial ownership of properties. And what this really means is I see every house having like a second market for every house to where you can easily sell pieces of your property. You can buy pieces of other people's properties. Real estate will just be a stock. You can buy a mutual fund. You can buy like a fund of a lot of them. But a lot of the red tape, the regulation, having to build funds and stuff like that you've done, like that stuff is being streamlined over time. And I'm seeing a lot of these startups and these tech companies start to address that. So, fast forward, you're going to be able to sell bits and pieces of your house, which is cool because your payment will go down, but you can still live in the house. And there's going to be a lot more innovative ways to finance properties. You'll be able to push a button and sell your house soon. We're getting close to that. I actually did a video where I took this vision and built this crazy drone video of drones buying houses. I watched that video. It's coming. Did you? Yeah, exactly. It's coming, and it's coming faster than you might think. Like, in all sincerity, I think like right now is the last time that the mom and pop real estate investor can kind of get in before things are completely streamlined. Like a lot of what I'm doing on the artificial intelligence, I'm streamlining things so much that you can't go down to your local courthouse and find something that no one else can find. We still have a little bit of time for that to where you can hustle in real estate, but it's going to be all efficient and much different very soon. So if you're in real estate, scale it up fast. I mean, your kids, I don't think will be able to be like a house flipper in the same way that we've all grown up around.
One of my favorite real estate investors of all time is Howard Marks at Oaktree, a big Warren Buffett devotee.
Oh, nice.
He managed like 180 billion now. And he's constantly talking about, the opportunity for superior returns depends on opaque information. Like if it's easily available to everyone else, there's not going to be the large differential there. And so this idea of like, if you have the AI where you've got that information edge before other people, there's obviously big opportunities, right?
Well, insider trading in the stock world, you go to jail. Insider trading in real estate, you get rich. Like your job as a real estate investor is to get information other people don't have. That's what you're supposed to do.
What's another, 0 to 100 million bootstrap entrepreneur principle?
Your team. I mean, I'm so lucky that I was like the face and the CEO, and it's like, oh, Ross, you did it. Congratulations. And it was the team and the culture for sure. Like culture is not a buzzword. I used to think it was culture, whatever, just show up and work. But to get your whole team to be as passionate as you are is the magic that teams have, to where a small team can beat out a big team. Now it's been so interesting because I started a bootstrap company, build it up. When we sold, we only had like 30-ish employees, a lot of contractors, but about 30-ish employees. And then I became part of a company with 18,000 employees. And I was able to clearly see the benefits and just the huge disadvantages of all of the red tape. And it's like people at some of those companies, not necessarily First American, like their mindset is they just don't want to get fired. It's like, I'm here, sounds like a cool idea, but I'm trying to clocking out early today, right? That was not the mentality of a startup. We were working till we fell asleep on our computers sometimes, right? Like we were able to run circles around the bigger companies because of our culture. And I was able to incentivize people in very direct ways as a small startup, to where once we became part of a big company, I couldn't even incentivize my salespeople with commission, right? In a way that is going to motivate them. A salesperson, you want the payment to be as close to the action. If I can pay a salesperson their commission every day, I would, because they're going to do it up. They're going to make that money. But if you have to wait 2 months before you get your commission, anyway, there's just a big shift in mentality there, and the David and Goliath story. So it was fun. It was fun to have both perspectives. And I didn't even know what the corporate ladder was. I never had to ask anyone for anything. I would just go figure it out. But anyway, it was interesting to be on both sides of the fence for a little while. And it's given me a lot of insight into some of the challenges people have and the challenges companies have.
So, you hear the words team and culture ad nauseum, right? And then you get the people who are like, you get this feeling they're saying it because they're supposed to say it. It's like the humble brag or something, right? And then you get the folks like in their tone of voice, you're like, oh no, they're believers. And like, I got that from you just now. Like you were just saying it. Like, it came through real strong. So I want to talk about this. When you think about this idea of like making that enthusiasm contagious, what's a practical example or what's a tip?
Well, it's just transferring your obsession, right? Like if you're completely and totally obsessed with something, it translates. When the head of the company is clocking out early, it's like Dave Mira doing a manual over a box. You're like, oh, cool. Like it's just, it's hard. It's really hard to quantify a feeling that you're able to kind of transmute from yourself to other people. But the breaking point is when once you're like mid-level management or people just a step below you or even below you, once they start telling your story or once they start talking or acting like you've breached a new level. And the benefits are just, immeasurable. And culture is a real thing. But, just, I guess leading by example, actually caring about the people that work for you, remembering things about them, like just the way that you talk to the people that you're around is the way that you communicate and incentivize and help people get up and care about people when they go through hard times. I've had really great people that have went through like really tough things at home before. And then just giving them the ability to have that time, when they come back, like we helped them. Like you're transferring like care and help. So it's hard to quantify that in an exact solution, other than I guess maybe just the one I just gave of some of our people having a tough time and us allowing them to take that time.
Yeah. So that's great advice. It's funny how like I couldn't take what you just said and put it on a checklist, but I get this sense, I get like a feeling of what that means. And I'm sitting here running through my brain, asking myself, what does that look like at my company? So I like it. But I want to make sure to save some time to talk about your passion and the charity around affordable housing.
Yeah. Thanks so much for giving me a second here. And this is really exciting. Listen, I talked about habits a little bit, and I have I put together like my habits in like a workbook, like my morning routine, my evening routine, how I write down my goals, how I check in on that goal, and I can give that away to your members if you want me to, because habits are really important. And after I sold my company, all my books and my courses, like I can give that stuff to you guys. If you just shoot me an email, maybe we'll pop an email address up on the screen here, but I'll circle back to that. Yeah, it's my ross@successcap.com. ross@successcap.com. And you'll get it. I'll shoot you an email right back with links to all the free stuff that I used to sell, from business to real estate to kind of where to start. So it's a really valuable little thing I'm just providing. And then also there's a little bit of information there on my charity, on my nonprofit. So I spent the first 20 years of my life focused on myself. I'm spending the balance of my life focused on helping other people through transferring my knowledge over to you in podcasts, and also helping people with affordable housing. Now, I truly believe there are the haves and the have-nots. And it's people who have real estate and people who do not have real estate. And we created a phenomenal nonprofit to address affordable housing. Now, where we're starting is on keeping people in the houses that they already own. Single parents that are losing their house for financial reasons, our nonprofit comes in, helps them get all taken care of financially, provides them mentoring and coaching and local resources to get them on their path. If they do need to sell their property, we have commission-free ways to do that. So we're trying to help people in those positions. And you remember I mentioned I made my first $1 million by knocking on the doors of people that were in financial distress. And I always wished I could just help them like I'm doing now. So after I sold, I said, this is the tip of the spear, right? We have a much bigger play in the affordable housing, but over the next 12 months, we're focused on this effort. And the reason I'm so excited about this is anything I do now, I want it to be a legacy. So when we help these individuals, we give them the money they need, 0% interest, no payment, second mortgage gets recorded against their property. So when they do sell the property in the future, the money comes back to the nonprofit, and the nonprofit can then help someone else. So it's a flywheel. You know, I put a lot of money into it, building out all the infrastructure for it. And if anyone wants to donate, even if it's just $10, that $10 can help someone today, 10 years from now, 100 years from now. So it's a charity that kind of builds on itself, and donations have an echo effect. And I'm really excited to get that flywheel going. It's savinghomes.com. savinghomes.com. And yeah, you can read all about it there. We have a great team of people. A lot of the top real estate entrepreneurs out there are joining what we call our dream team, because homeownership is the American dream. And they're using their financial resources, their influence, their connections to help make a big impact in affordable housing through all sorts of different ways, not just keeping people in their houses they're losing or being evicted out of, but in all sorts of different ways. Because again, just like I do, if I'm going to do something, I want to surround myself with the best people, build a team, and I expect that this charity and this mission will be just as successful, if not more, than anything else I've done before. I've never seen so many people so willing to help and make that connection. In business, you have to fight for it, right? But when you're helping people, a single mom get a home or stay in their home, I mean, people clear the path for you, and they make some great introductions. So it's very, very new. We're just getting it up right now, but you're going to start seeing some great success stories there, because we have a lot of people worth hundreds of millions that are on the dream team.
That's okay. We should do this. Let's schedule you to come back on the show in a year just to give us an update on the charity. Let's do another episode.
I'd love to. That would be fantastic. I definitely want to make sure to stay. to stay in touch with you and your subscribers.
Well, that's just such a worthy cause. And I love, I've been around a charity for, I guess 14 years now. And I mostly think the charity model sucks. And I think social entrepreneurship is generally better. But something like that, where the money doesn't evaporate, like hats off to coming up with a model that does perpetual good instead of one-time good.
Yeah, and that's really what stops me sometimes from helping charities, because it's just it's a Band-Aid. Like, I want to fix something at a mass scale. And one of my neighbors owned a big publicly traded bank, and he said, "Ross, I'd love to donate to this because, it's going to keep helping, and it also helps the banks as well, right? Like everyone wins with this, and this is not a handout. It's lending a helping hand in a lot of different ways. So we're really excited about the echo effect that this is going to have throughout many generations."
Well, it's only been in the last, I don't know, maybe 3 years ago that I really started learning more about, for the average American, basically everybody who's not the 3% of entrepreneurs creating the jobs, right? That basically for everybody else, like you look at societal wealth and family wealth, and like the number one contributor is multi-generational real estate and being able to pass it on or be able to sell it, and that upgrades the kids so they can get real estate. Like over and over and over, that is such a thing. However, it's so tough to get that start for folks. Like one of my other favorite people, actually, let's catch up offline. I want to connect you to them. They are helping people, especially like immigrants or families that have never been in real estate. They're helping them build credit scores by paying the rent on their apartments. And they've worked out things with credit agencies to be able to, like, basically, how can we lower the bar to get more families into real estate ownership? You guys would really get along. So,
yeah, I'm looking forward to that, because there's a lot going on in affordable housing, but what's really happening is they're creating affordable rentals, which is keeping people renters forever. And every real estate seminar you've ever heard of or been a part of, they go, real estate's the number one way to become a millionaire. And that's literally what got me. I'm like, okay, number one way, I'll play the odds. Let's do real estate. But it's also the number one way out of poverty in America. And with the appreciation pop we had, it just put it it just put it way too high up for people. That 10-foot goal became a 15-foot goal, and then interest rates went up. So basically it's a generation of renters where the owners are these big Wall Street companies, and, real estate ownership is really important. You can just go to sleep every night and wake up and have an extra $100,000 in net worth if you own real estate. And you're right, stability for the children, passing it on generationally, the tax benefits. We can do a whole conversation just on that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's fascinating to me. Before the show, we were talking about kind of our thoughts around building these Airbnb resorts, but using non-traditional building materials, and just, can we build our places at half price? We think that's a way to help the returns, right? And one of the kind of like, several $100 million family offices that were, have been looking at investments with us, like what they came back to me with is like, well, could we just build entire neighborhoods? Like if that stuff exists, like what if we just built neighborhoods for that? So I like keep thinking about like, where is, inexpensive land in the path of growth where we could like go in and intentionally build first-time homes for families. Like here in Utah, you got all these schools, like, anyways, we got like multiple schools with 30, 40,000 students each, right? It's really tough to get a starter home here because appreciation has just jumped, right? It's like, what if we went and built a whole community where it's like, it looks like a house, but it just looks like a small house. And it's for like the young married couple with a kid. But like if all their neighbors have this kind of house and they all back onto the same play swing set, and they like the entire neighborhood is built like this, and it is like, it's this idea of your first home, but it's actually a home. It's not a condo, or it's like it's actually for the family or something. Like, what if you could like set a new expectation? Like, oh, this is a great starter home. Like come here until your third kid. It's got the nursery, like it's 2.2 bedrooms or something. Like, anyways, it's something we've been thinking about. Like, how could you, are there ways we could get, utilities in cheaper than normal? Are there like, what could you do if you're going after extreme affordability of like resetting what a first home looks like for people? And could you start that 10 years earlier in a family's life or something?
Yeah. I mean, you can get the land for free in a lot of ways, and there's so many creative things to do. And the dream team that I mentioned is I created kind of a mastermind of people to come together, because I know 5 people I want to introduce you to that could help you not go down certain paths because they already tried, and say, hey, this is the way to go. So I've created a little bit of a club of real estate philanthropists that want to get together and just brainstorm this. Rather than talking about how to get a 1% better opt-in rate, let's talk about how to get 1% more people buying houses. And that's really where the fulfillment comes, because I've been a bootstrapper. I've been completely broke. Now I'm ridiculously rich. I feel about the same inside. So there's not a crazy difference. There's a difference, but it's just like the way I feel in my heart.
What's one fun thing you bought?
Well, really, the build of my new house, I kind of went a little bit crazy on the pool.
Oh yeah, tell people about the slate.
This pool. I'll tell people about the slate real quick so you can see what's out there. Inside my house is all slate. It goes out into a patio. Then you press a button, and the part of the patio submerges down and creates a pool. So you can choose how deep you want your pool. You can have stairs in certain spots. So it's just a really cool way to have a pool and a good pool cover, and it's safer for the kids and the animals. And it's in the front yard, so we had to do that because we're actually building into a mountain. It's a berm house. That's a whole nother conversation. But even as I'm sitting in that pool, I want to make sure that I'm able to give back at a high level, because that's what makes me feel best. And I think that rings true to most people that have went to zero to some crazy level. So tie that into your everyday, even if you're not there.
Yeah. Listen, I know we're over time. Do you have a couple more minutes, or should we pick it up on another roll?
I do. I
want to talk about the value of writing books, having a podcast, elevating your profile so that you then have some profile to lend to your company. Can you talk about some of those principles?
Yes. And for everyone who's still listening, this is a big golden nugget here. So I'm going to answer that question. So the first book that inspired me was Think and Grow Rich, just the main success principles. Before I bought my first property in real estate, I started to write a book. It's called Real Estate Investing in Your 20s. I'm going to give it to everyone for free if you email me. Real Estate Investing in Your 20s. And what I did is I totally believed that I was going to become a real estate millionaire. I was literally a broke BMX person with no connections, but I'm like, oh, I'm going to do this. So I started to write How to Become a Millionaire in Real Estate in Your 20s before I'd even closed my first deal. It was kind of in diary format. It's a really unique book. I've never seen anything written like that before. And what that did is it put me in the mindset of, I'm going to do this. Like, I truly believed it in my heart. You can watch interviews from me back then. It's just crazy. Like, I knew something big was going to happen. And I wrote that book because of what you said. I wanted to say there was no degree for real estate. I wanted to say, hey, I was an author. I wanted to have a book. It felt like a credibility thing. Maybe I had like poser syndrome in some weird way, but I wanted to have something tangible I can hold and say, hey, this is what I do. It made what I was going to do real. So if you are, wherever you are, you can write a book, how to go from being a truck driver to having $20,000 a month in passive income. Like, start writing that book. It's so awesome because you are writing a story of your life right now. You might as well like write it down, but there's so much psychology that goes behind doing that. And if you complete it, just self-publish it, right? I self-published that book. I had other books get professionally published, but that book I self-published. And it is, the importance is in having that authority and having a reason to talk to other successful people to build that network and to stay sharp. When I sold my company, I didn't want to start another company right away. It's the advice I got from my early mentors. But I wanted to stay sharp and stay around entrepreneurs you know, and people that are doing big things, because that's what inspired me. So I don't know if I answered the question, but I was excited to give that little trick.
Let's dive
worked
into
for
it.
me.
So how many books did you write altogether?
I wrote 3.
And then
all in real estate.
How long ago did you start doing podcasting and YouTube videos and stuff like that?
2009, but I didn't really treat it properly. I was just recording what I was doing. I was kind of passive about it. My podcast came really late. I did a few seasons and then kind of just let it cool down.
When you think about advice for entrepreneurs, CEOs today on having a podcast with where podcasting has gotten to, in your mind, what are the advantages for a CEO to have a show today and, make connections like we're doing today?
The accountability to constantly be speaking with high net worth, exciting people is really important. When you create a process around that, you are forcing that network, because nothing works without accountability. If you told yourself, oh, I want to talk with 5 people that blah, 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 you wouldn't do it. But you got a podcast, you have someone setting up a meeting, you have to show up, you got to be on time. So it puts the most important principle of success, your network and just your continuing learning, in a format that holds you accountable to do a good job and to take it seriously. And that's why I'm on these podcasts. I like to take it seriously. So you can be on podcasts or you can host your own podcast, but you need to be out there talking one way or another. And if you have a way to outsource all the annoying work of what shows to get on and how to do it, definitely take advantage of that sooner rather than later.
I'm so happy to hear you say it that way. My one company, Greystoke Networks, where we make shows like this for CEOs, we talk about this stuff all the time. I've never heard anyone say it like that. But for me, what resonated when you said that is like, I don't know if you feel this way. I feel like so often the biggest deals are done based on relationship. Like your stuff has to be good. That's like prerequisite to the league, but that doesn't get you the deal done. It's like you have to have a great product. You have to have something special to bring. That's just like table stakes. Like that's how you get in the game. Like getting the deals done, getting the giant enterprise client. Like in my experience, this is relationships. Getting the huge investment, having the exits, things like this is so relationship based at the highest levels. And it's not like I'm at the highest levels, but I've owned a couple of different businesses with different billionaires. I get to interview billionaires. We, these things. And like this one billionaire I own a company with, I was so excited. He took us on a private jet out to his like $20 million yacht. I'd never been on one before. I thought it was the coolest thing ever. I thought it was like on MTV or something, right?
It's awesome.
And like, I found out like that place is like a revolving door all summer. And he just has different sets of executives and different folks on there. And he's got like a staff of 5 to take care of like 6 people. You know what I mean? And it's like, and he just gets like multi-day relationship building with these people. And it's just like a merry-go-round of folks coming on that boat. And like, shocker, he was worth a couple $1 billion, And to me, it's like, I don't currently have a $20 million yacht, right? But I can do this to connect to where I've got something to give to them because I'm giving them, essentially PR for whatever they're trying to get attention for. And it's like a great way to start a friendship, I find. Anyways.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right. I mean, there is probably a greater than 50% chance you and I will find some wins after we get off this show or make a connection that makes a difference, just getting people's attention like this. And I know a lot of people that have done exactly what you're talking about. They've had ridiculous assets that they have masterminds that they let people use in different ways. And it's social currency and it works, So when done right, a Ferrari is not an expense. It's making you money.
Well, 3 weeks ago, we had this billionaire. He's a member of the royal family from a country in the Middle East. He's a consul general out in Los Angeles, right? He lent us his $37 million mansion. And I invited, so I got 4 billionaires there. I got a guy who produced $100 million movies like Suicide Squad and The Dark Knight. We had people from Amazon Music, chairman of U.S. Olympic Skateboarding. I invited like 50 high-profile people off the show and their friends to come, and he loved it. Like at the end of the party, he invited me. He's like, "Do you want to borrow the house again?" I was like, "Yes, I do." Right. And anyways, I just never heard anybody say it the way that you said it. And you're right. Like that accountability to stay sharp instead of like my good intentions, I should connect with people. It's like, I feel guilty canceling podcasts on people. So like it happens by default because my team keeps setting these up. Right.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, it's important to talk to really successful people. If you want to be successful, you got to surround yourself with those individuals, and you can do it digitally now, which is great. But show up to things too. Show up, something good might happen. If you get an invite to something, if there's an event you can go to, just show up, because it is easy to get stuck in your routine at your house and kind of get a little down on yourself. And I mean, it happens at all levels. It's happened to me. But then I'll go to an event and I'll come back and I'm like energized. Or I'll be like, I don't want to get in a podcast. But then I get off it and I'm like, that was the best use of an hour, right? So it's, show up, something good might happen.
I love it. Okay, so as we wind down here, where should people connect with you on social? What are the websites you should go to? Let's get that email address again so they can get copies of your books.
Yeah, the best thing to do is to email me, ross@successcap.com. I got a treasure chest of stuff for anyone who's trying to do something that's big and exciting. Savinghomes.com is a great place to go. Depending on when you're watching this show, is the website you will see, either a placeholder or the actual website. And after I sold, I kind of I'm doing a social fast for a little while. So I am nowhere out there. So that's why you're part of podcasts like this, because you can pull people out from the mountains and share information that you can't find. You can't find me on social.
That's great. Well, thanks again for all your time today.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Okay. Bye, everyone.